So you have a whole industry, and you could go on and on with the types of regulations and entities that exist out there in the so-called free market, that are creations of government, that are being piled one on top of the other to create this massive bureaucracy, all focused on getting Americans to buy homes, all focused on getting poor Americans to buy homes, whether they can afford them or not. And when this creates the kind of bubble and the kind of buying frenzy that happened just a few years ago, and when all this suddenly collapses, who gets blamed? Wall Street and the mortgage lenders, not the buyers. You know, the buyers are never blamed. The people who bought homes they can't afford are never blamed. But all the financiers, the bankers, the mortgage brokers, the whole chain of, you know, where free enterprise still reigns, that's blamed. And the regulatory structure, the incentives, the Federal Reserve, all these entities the government has created, not only did they get off scot-free, but their powers get enhanced. What does Paulson want to do? He wants to make the Fed stronger, more powerful. Okay? What did they do just recently? They gave Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae the ability to lend more money, i.e. to buy more mortgages, to encourage more of this stuff. The Federal Home Loan Bank has been, its capitalization has increased. We wanted them to make more loans to banks. We want to encourage more home ownership. Indeed, if you look at the proposals of McCain, of Hillary, and Obama, all of them involve more government intervention into this area, which will encourage more home ownership. So, if you had a balance, if you had to put in place, you know, what caused this? Is it a few corrupt mortgage bankers? There were corrupt mortgage bankers. I'm not denying the fact that there were corrupt mortgage bankers. Are they mortgage bankers and Wall Street financiers who made bad decisions? Absolutely. But that's not what caused this crisis. What caused this crisis is massive, systemic government controls, government incentives, Federal Reserve mistakes, although I think everything the Federal Reserve does ultimately is a mistake, because I don't think its job is feasible, is doable. Massive, that's what caused this crisis, that's what caused this recession. And yet, there's not a voice out there stating this. You don't hear it. It's those greedy financiers. It's those greedy bankers. And this is not new in capitalism. How many people talk about the wonderful benefits that capitalism generated during the 19th century in America? How many of you students taking a class in American history study the heroes of the Industrial Revolution? The people who created the middle class in America by creating jobs, by creating wealth, by creating the infrastructure that this country is built upon. What do we call them in our history and our economics classes? We call those giants of industry of the 19th century, the people who built this country, we call them robber barons. We call them robber barons. They're bad guys. They're not good guys. They're the enemy. Who are the heroes? The heroes are everybody who's attacked capitalism from day one. Who caused the Great Depression? I bet you I'd ask any number of people in the street or in university, who caused the Great Depression? Well, it's Wall Street, right? It's speculation. It's the markets caused Wall Street. Well, no. Every semi-decent economist, even ones who don't believe in capitalism, will admit, maybe you have to squeeze them a little bit to get the admission out of them, but will admit that the Federal Reserve caused the Great Depression and lots of bad government programs caused the Great Depression. Who brought about all the wealth that we enjoy today? Where do our cell phones come from? Our iPhones, our nice automobiles that we drive, the phenomenal standard of living that we have in this country. Is it brought about by the government bureaucrats sitting in Washington, grounding our airplanes? No, this is business brought this about. It's whatever freedom exists in the American markets brought this about. This wealth is a consequence of capitalism. And if you want to see a kind of experiment, I mean, the beauty of this is there are experiments going on out there. You can actually observe before and after. Take a country like Poland. Under socialism, under, relative capitalism. More freedom than now. I mean, the economic difference is astounding. The standard of living in Poland today and the standard of living in Poland under communism. Or take Hong Kong in the 1970s and 80s versus China in the 1970s and 80s when tens of millions of people were starving. In Hong Kong, this tiny little speck of a nothing rock, right, where hundreds of thousands of people were coming into this rock, no natural resources, and yet standard of living and wealth creation was booming. I mean, there are plenty of experiments that show that economic freedom generates wealth, generates a high standard of living, generates economic success, generates economic growth, generates prosperity for those who are willing to work for that prosperity. So how come the disconnect? Because it's not that we don't understand how capitalism works from an economic perspective, because we do. I mean, we've had great economists in our past who got it, who figured it out, who understood that socialism does not work, that government regulation destroys wealth, doesn't create it. We've had great economists who've explained that how capitalism works and why it works, and what is it about it that works. So the theoretical basis, economic theoretical basis, exists for why capitalism, unregulated capitalism, actually works in a sense of producing wealth, creating a high standard of living, benefiting the individual who's willing to go out there and work for himself.